Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Am I supposed to introduce myself, or everybody? You already sent the profile out, I guess, right? So anyway, I'm Sanjiv Noronha. I'm from MBM batch 95, and I want to thank Nikhil and his team and the alumni for giving me this opportunity to speak, or rather harassing me into speaking. It with either way, but I'm happy to help out, and since they're doing a great job. Um, my presentation today is not going to be very long in terms of slides, because that's part of turnaround management, that you need to get a point very fast and then execute on it. So without much ado, I just have 3 slides, and then I will take you through my experiences that I have gone through. Oops. Okay. So let's talk about turnaround management. I mean, most people don't know about it, but it's quite a lucrative business. When I say lucrative business, means because you have very little competition. There aren't too many people who want to do it, because most people tend to want stability. They want to know where their salary is coming from. So effectively, you have less competition. And I mean, I liken it to be like you're a janitor cleaning dirt, or you can put it a little more nicely and say that you're a mechanic who's fixing a car, whichever way you want to put it. And without insulting any of the consultants who may be on this call, but there are a lot of consultants in this world who come and tell you what to do, but don't know how to do it. And I think today, most of the big promoters and companies are looking for doers, and not for somebody to tell them what needs to be done on a theoretical basis, or what these numbers make sense, but how do you ultimately translate all those slides and recommendations into actual, work on the ground. So my experience has been is that most people are looking for problem solvers, and not somebody to tell them what the problem is. The other thing is, you have to keep in mind, when you are going into a company which is sick or has been losing money for it's already in dire situation. Generally, they don't have the money. There's no cash flow. There are a lot of other issues, whether it's personnel, it could be technical, it could be, a whole list of problems. So there is no point. What most people say, okay, I'm coming to help you out, but you have to pay me this big money, right? Because I'm the only guy in town. In my career, I've taken a little bit of a different approach, which I believe has worked very well for me. So, and I call it the money where your mouth is approach. Because when I go to the promoters or the owners, they, a lot of people, they by that time, a lot of the times they've had the consultants, they brought them in, they've told them this, they make these nice 40, 50 page reports. But now what do you do with staring with this 40 page, 50 page report, and you spend so much money on? And a lot of the times the consultants really don't go and feel the pulse of the business. And I think one of the keys to getting into turnaround management is, how do you go right to the bottom and feel the pulse of the business? And so I call this the money where your mouth is approach. So I tell them, okay, first I will tell them, fine, you just pay me X amount of money, not too much, but they need to know that you're working there, and they need to pay you a little bit. But if I deliver X, Y, and Z, this is what I delivered, then you pay me this much. And then you can demand what, maybe 10X, 20X, whatever you want to demand. Because at the end of the day, from his point of view, you are now saying, look, I'm going to come in and I'm going to fix the problem for you. This is how much it is worth to you. So you pay me this. And that approach has always worked for me, in my career. So this is just a snapshot. Then I want to make a couple of general points. I said one is, not all companies can be turned around. Please understand that. You just don't go into a company and then say, oh, there is a problem here. And most of the time, you'll get called. I mean, I've been fortunate enough not to have made a resume in 25 years, because most of the time it gets by word of mouth, because there are not too many people who want to take this on. So my normal approach is to go into a company, and I don't charge them anything for it. I just go into a company, I look at it, I see what's going on for about a month, maybe a little more. And then I figure out whether it is salvageable or not. A lot of the times you will see that most companies have already gone past that, date where you can really turn things around. And there's no point in you even going and trying to say, I can do this, I can do that, and get some money, because at the end of the day, you're not a magician. So you have to be very clear in your head that I'm not just going because I need a job and I'm going to do something, and okay, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'm back home. Because one of the things in this is, and the reason why I've not had to make a resume in 25 years is because it's all word of mouth. And it has always been through, some CEO of a bank or some guy who's known this thing. So that is very, very important, that at least, and most of the times, the biggest advantage you have is being honest with them. There's no point in them keeping on trying to, you can't bring a dead man alive. So you've got to look at that and understand that upfront. So if once I determine that it is doable, then I'll do the deal with them and say, okay, this is what we can do. We'll turn this around. This is what I think we can achieve. And then this is what you pay me. And that has worked very well. Then you also have to figure out the different environments during this whole process. So for example, if you're turning around a company in America, in the US, it's very different from turning around a company in India. And it's very different from turning around a company, say, in Indonesia or Singapore, for that matter. And the reason for that is because, there are different legal systems. For example, I'll give you, in the US, it is so focused, the legal side is very strong. You can go to court, you can get judgments in time or whatever, and so on and so forth. Now you go to India, you can file a case, some cases go on for 20, 25 years. So you have to understand which environment you're working in, whether it's from a legal perspective, regulatory perspective, or for that matter, and very, very important, is the cultural perspective. And therefore, once you understand that, you then need to tailor your approach in how you're going to then turn around this company. And I can cite you many, many examples. Let's take cultural example, for example. I remember when in 1999, I was with Chem Oil then. I had moved from Manila in 96, and I was in San Francisco, and then I was in Houston. Now, we bought a company there, it was a small trading company. There were 3 partners, they're Dutch. And at that time, we bought it, they had a loss, so we bought it, of $2 million, we bought it for, for $1, because we were providing the lines. Now, prior to my going there were 2 American guys who had gone there, but they didn't last more than 6 months or a year, and they were all sent back because they couldn't get along with the local partners. So I had to go there in 99. One of the things I learned is, when you are going into a different environment, you are the foreigner there. Yes, you own 50% of the company. Yes, you are on the board of directors, but you are, by you telling them I know what needs to be done, and I know what you're going to do, it is not going to endear you to them. They are partners, they have their egos, so you need to manage it. So what my approach was for the first 3 months, 6 months, I didn't say anything. I just observed. And then I built first the personal relationship, rather than telling them where they were wrong and everything else. And then slowly, started moving in it, because the underlying point there was, I am the foreigner there. And if I want to get them on my side, I have to adapt to them. And there are a few things you will learn in the office. And these are the things I look at, and I call it the soft side of turnaround management. How do you get yourself to endear yourself to your partners, at least in this case? For example, if you got up from your chair and you went to get yourself a cup of coffee, it was a small office, 10 people. You asked everybody where they would have a cup of coffee. And that was kind of, you watched around and seen what is there. And so you start doing the same thing, and you start endearing yourself to them, and therefore, we became good friends. And to date, I'm still in touch with them at times. The end result of that is that in a year's time, we turned the company around and it made $2 million profit. So that is what I call about understanding the cultural aspects of a business or an office or any place that you're going to when you're turning around a company. Then there is legal side. You understand what is the legal side. I mean, I can give you some more examples of this. When I was in the US, I remember I had just moved from Manila in '96 to San Francisco. And my boss told me, hey, you need to go and find a bank. And I said, I don't know anything about finance. Just for the wider public who don't know, but Chem Oil, this company that I'm talking about, was founded by an AIM alumnus. I don't know which, but I think he was 78 or something in the 70s. One of the best guys you can work for, somebody who's been a father to me in business and taught me the ropes. If today I am what I am today in business, it's because of him. His name was Robert Chandran. And I mean, I'll talk about it a little later, but we'll come back. But talking from the legal, and he told me, he said, you know what, we need to find a bank. And I said, look, I don't know finance. It wasn't my subject in school. And he told me one thing. He said, remember, finance is marketing. And in those days, there was no internet. I remember taking a directory of banks, 500 banks, writing to all of them. And he just said, remember, it's marketing. And remember, you need one bank. And I went through this experience of making 120 letters in those days. We're talking about 96, sending it to the banks. Surprisingly, the way the US works, because of the legal system, they're very open in how they do business because the legal system covers them. The same thing doesn't happen in India, for example. And at the end of that exercise, I had 12 term sheets. We met with 6 banks, and we raised the money. So you have to understand each environment and how it operates. At the same time, it can work. You have to also understand what the details of that environment. I'll give you another example on this one in the US. So Chem Oil had a fantastic ride from 86 to 93. 93, it was nearly technically bankrupt, and that's when I joined and we rebuilt the company. But at one point, the banks had told us that we had to exit, and I was negotiating at that time with GE Capital. And we had nearly reached agreement, and then because GE knew we had to exit the bank by Monday, on Friday evening, they started asking us for things I didn't believe we should give them because it would have affected our business in the legal documents. And I decided to pull out. And at that point of time, CIT Bank then said, we are going to, if we didn't have a bank on Monday, we were dead. This is where, it's guts, it's confidence. And that's what Bob used to really have. I said, no, if it's going to affect our business, we're going to do it. So the bank at that time said, oh, we are going to pull out and all on Monday. So here's what I found out. If you in the US are a minority business, which we were, and they pull it out, you can sue them big time for killing a minority business. So I said, okay, you guys want to pull out, you can do it. But I'm telling you, I have a lawsuit on you the next moment because you are killing a minority business. I'm just asking you for another 3 months extension. So anyway, so they backed off. It's all about playing poker, and we survived that. So understanding the different environments is very, very important. Then my next point is really every business that where you go into, you will normally see that there are 2 or 3 key drivers, which normally will give you 70 to 90% of your profitability. You got to figure out, go down right to the bottom and figure out what are those 3 drivers. And this is, I'm talking it from a brick and mortar company standpoint, business standpoint, is what are those drivers? And it takes some time to get to know it. You can look at different businesses, and I can tell you, for example, in the education business, it's a student-teacher ratio, which determines your cost. Management determines it, and cost is a big thing across any business. Okay, there are petrochemical companies. I can give you many examples, but you have to figure out what are those 2 or 3 drivers which will unlock the value for you. And then once you figure them out, and we can go through examples on my next slide, when I get into the turnaround of the 2 different groups that I did, is what are those and how do you figure those out, and then how do you make it happen? The next point is turnaround is a lot of basics and common sense. Unfortunately, you will, as a lot of you will see, that sometimes common sense is uncommon. And it's just having the ability to just make decisions and go with it. After that, you're dealing with what I call a negative company environment. What do I mean by a negative company environment? You're talking about people are demotivated. They've lost money. People don't know whether they'll have jobs. So you are now going into a completely negative environment. So how do you go into a negative environment and change that? And to me, it has always been, ultimately, it comes down to you as a leader and how you are going to take it on and connect. And that's where I come to my next point, which is personal traits or helpful personality traits, whichever way you want to put it. To be in turnaround management for me is that one is you have to, and a lot of people ask me, Sanjiv, why don't you start your own business? You blah, 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 you're so good in this and that. But to me, to be a good turnaround guy, you have to be a frustrated entrepreneur. And when I say frustrated entrepreneur, I mean that you do everything that an entrepreneur has done, but you didn't have the cojones to really do it yourself. So that's why I have a lot of respect for entrepreneurs. There are some entrepreneurs in this group who I know, and I have a lot of respect for them. 2 is, you need to be a risk taker. And when I say risk is, a very generic term. It means a lot of things to a lot of people, a different thing to different people. But in anything you do, there is risk. The question is, do you understand the risk and how do you manage that risk? So let me give you an example, which I normally quote when I give some lectures here and there to the MBA students. But the way I explain risk is very simple. Is when you stand at a traffic light in, say, Singapore or in the US, you're at a zebra crossing, you're on your phone normally, and then you see the guy green and you start walking. You don't think twice looking left or right, you just start walking. So in that situation, you had to cross the road to get from one point to the other. And you understood, like, okay, it's green, go. Now you take the same person on the phone, and you put them into India, in Mumbai, or I guess Manila to a certain extent, in certain places. I'm not as familiar, but Mumbai. Now you are standing at the zebra crossing. When the person turns green, you don't suddenly continue walking. You look left, right, because nobody is following the rules. The rickshaws are coming, the motorcycles are coming, a car will sideswipe you. So what do? You will look left, you look right, and then you may run a little bit, or you'll come back, and then, or you'll see it's clear, and then you'll run across. The man is green. It didn't matter because nobody follows. Now you take this example of risk and understanding and managing risk. It is the same person doing the same task just in a different environment. It is because, why did you behave differently in the two different environments? It's because you understood the risk. You were doing the same task, you're the same person, and but you went to in a different environment. So what did you do in the first place? You just crossed. You didn't think. Everybody follows rules in America, Singapore, nothing's going to happen. But in India, you look left, right, you ran across and you jumped and you sprinted to the other side. Why did you behave differently? The answer is very simple. It's because you understood the risk. You understood that the risk was different. And then you understood how to manage that risk. And that's why I said, you know, you have to be a risk taker. But in risk taking, it's just, you know, people use risk. Oh, it's too risky. What does too risky mean? In anything that you do in life, there is a risk. The question is, how do you understand the risk and how do you manage that risk? The other personal trait is you have to be able to make quick decisions. Okay, you have to be able to make quick decisions. You have to have a clear head in chaos. And if you don't, because a lot of the times there's a lot of things going on, you know, the bank is saying they're not going to finance, there's some production problem somewhere else. So you have to be able to see a clear picture in chaos. Okay. And you have to make quick decisions, whether it is, you know, technical, whether you get the right people and all, and you make a decision, or you you have really no time to waste, because every time you're not going to be able to, you know, you waste, you're losing money or you're losing something else because the company is already going down. In short, you have no time to be a nice guy. And one thing I have come to the conclusion for myself is that I cannot work in the diplomatic service. And for people who know me, they'll know that very well about me. You've got to call a spade a spade. You've got to do the deal. And that has to show in your leadership, in your passion. Because remember, you are in already a negative mindset of all the employees. So you have to be the one, the cheerleader, the positive thinker, the action guy, everything together. And you will see automatically, you go for small wins. You will see automatically people then start saying, oh, okay, you know, something is changing and it's for the positive. Now you will always have detractors. Okay. They'll always say, oh, this guy has come. Doesn't matter. You have to believe in yourself. And that's another trait you need to have in yourself. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that what you're doing is right, and you just have to go for it. Doesn't mean you're going to be right every time. But my personal philosophy has always been that, you know, it's better to be 3 steps forward and 1 step back. So at least you're 2 steps forward than just sitting down there and saying, no, this will happen, that will happen. And this happens a lot in all these big multinational companies. If you go into any of these big multinational companies, there are more people sitting down there covering their backside and telling you why you cannot do something rather than why you can do it. And you don't want, I remember Bob used to always say, I don't want negative people around me. I don't want somebody who's telling me why I can't do it. I need people to tell me how we can do it, or what is the solution to this problem. We don't need people to say, oh, this will happen, that will happen. I've been in meetings with big major oil companies, I won't take the names, where there are 20 guys sitting there and we are 2 guys on the other side. We're trying to do a transaction, a deal, and there are literally 18 guys sitting down saying, oh, the sky will fall on the head, water will be there, there's a spill, oh, what this will happen. And you wonder, sitting down there, these guys will never get anything done. But that's how they go through life, and more power to them. So there is no time to be a nice guy. You have to be objective. You can't put too much emotion into it, and you have to just cut. I'll give you an example of this, when you have to be really, and sometimes I wouldn't say you have to be inhumane or dehumane or whatever it is. But you have to be very, very objective. One of the plants I closed in Chennai, which was when I was doing a restructuring. And I got back to Singapore, And India, for people who are not from India, is a very melodramatic country when it comes to workers and their wives and everything else. So suddenly I get this call because we had shut down the plant, we had laid off, we were closing it, part of the whole big restructuring that we were doing, because we had 26 companies, 42,000 people, and we were 800 million in the hole at that time. So suddenly I get this phone call to say, "Oh, sir, all the wives of the workers have come to the head office and they are threatening to self-immolate themselves." It's very Indian melodrama there. So I said, "Okay, so what are you calling me for?" So the guy said, "Oh, sir, they are threatening to burn themselves, put themselves on fire and all that." So I told them, "Look, I have not given them life. I have no right to take it. They're calling the wrong number." I said, "Please call 1-800-GOD and let them deal with between them and their God, because I have no part in this thing. And if they do, they do. I'm not going to feel bad about it. That's a decision they made. That's a choice they made." So you need to be very, very objective in this. But at the same time, you also need to be humane. And let me take this to a different, in chem oil, for example, I remember when I first came to Singapore in 2001, the business has lost $5 million. Singaporean people like their 1%, 2% increase in salary every time. So when I came in and I took over running the whole office in 2003, I remember, and I told them, "You know what? We are not making money. There'll be no increments this year. Whoever wants to stay, stay. Whoever wants to go can go." And out of the 16, only one person left. That's fine. I said, "If you believe in me, you stay. If you don't believe in me, please go ahead and this thing." So one person left. That whole year we worked on turning it around. The following year, when we made money, and I told, in the your oil business and trading, you're normally a few people and you make decent money there. So I remember telling my boss, I said, "Look, my bonus is, you can mess with it, but you cannot mess with my people's bonus." And my belief is, if you want to impact people, you impact them in such a way that they will remember you. And that year and the following year, we made a whole bunch of money, 2005 and 6 it was. And then I left in 2007. We gave everybody 8 months of bonus. And in the following year, I gave them 10 months of bonus. Now you take this, for example, you take a girl who's in operations. She makes $5,000 a month in Singapore. She has a mortgage of, she has a house of 350,000. Suddenly she gets $40,000 to $50,000 in her hand. She can take that money and pay down 15% of her mortgage. That is an impact you have on them. And they will always remember you. Even today, I left Chemoil 13 years ago. For my birthday, they will still all call me and wish me. And that gives you more satisfaction than any money in the world, that you have been able to impact somebody's life and they remember you for that. So you have to be objective, but you have no time to be a nice guy, but you also have to be human and have that human impact. The other personal trait I would put is that you cannot have an ego. Or I'll put it a little differently. We all have egos. But you need to know, I always say, you need to know when to take your ego and shove it up somewhere and when to put it on the table. Because the reason for that is, when you go into a new business, you don't know everything about the business. You have to be able to go right down to the bottom, to the technical guy or whatever it is, to be able to learn and understand and humble yourself, because he knows more than you. And that is how you will always see that in any of these companies, you will always find what I call them, if it's a technical business or a petrochemical, you'll find these chemical engineers, what I call them, diamonds in the rough. They've been hidden somewhere because people didn't give them the opportunity, but they are brilliant. You just have to find those one or two guys, tell them, teach me. Most of the time you'll find they will give you, they have all the solutions, but they've just never been able to express it, or nobody's allowed it, or whatever political reasons they were this thing. So, you just have to be able to say, look, teach me. And I mean, for me, if you're turning around and I didn't, if I was the CEO and the phone was ringing, I would pick it up at the front desk, because that's your company. You have to think of it as your company and say that it doesn't matter whose job is it. And then you have to be a jack of all trades. You have to know you have to go and learn everything, whether it's finance, whether it's HR, whether it's the technical. You got to go and figure it out. You have to have that curiosity and that passion to go and do it. And that passion has to be seen in you, because you are in a negative environment, and you have to go in there and understand what it is. So my formula for this is that I go into a situation and I take in about 4 or 5 young MBAs, or 6. I think I had 3 or 4 of them from AIM when I was doing the Indian turnaround. And you just, because these guys are young, they have the drive, they have the enthusiasm, and you just direct them, and you just get them to do what do the analysis, find this, get them to think, and you just give them the direction. You'll be surprised at what they bring up and what you learn through the whole process. So that has been my formula for being able to do a lot of things. And ultimately, you always have to find in anything that you do, and this is my philosophy in life, is that you always have to find a balance. Balance in everything that you do, whether it's your personal life, whether it's in the company and everything. You're never going to get that perfect balance. But if you're close enough to it, it's fantastic. From a personal side, if you work too much, you make all the money and you have no time to enjoy it or spend it with your family, to me, there's no balance in that. You'll never get it perfect, but you should attempt to do that. So that's in short what I would call the personal traits required, and which are helpful. Okay. I have basically two groups that I really, 2 companies and 2 groups that I really worked with. One was for 14 years and one was for 5-6 years. So let me talk about the first one. When I joined Chemoil in 1993, I joined them in October. I was still in AIM at that time, I remember. And by December, they were technically bankrupt. We didn't file for Chapter 11, but we were doing about 100 million in turnover at that point of time in the oil business. We were in the bunker business. And I used to remember Bob used to always say, oh, we'll get out of this and all that. And he moved me I was in Manila at that time, and we were putting up an oil terminal in Nonoc Island in Surigao. I don't know if some of the Filipinos know where it is, but you have to go to Surigao, and then you took a banca from there. You had to go get a tricycle from the airport, go to the wharf, and then go on a banca to Nonoc Island. And we were putting up a terminal there, for which I started, ordering pipes for it. And we ordered all the pipes, and then we didn't have the money to pay for it. So I had this Chinese supplier, wanting to come to my house and probably kill me at that point of time because I didn't have the money. Chemoil didn't have the money to pay it. I didn't get paid. My princely sum of $500 per month salary was not paid for 6 months. But thanks to the Singapore system, we had an office in Singapore, and we had to shut all the offices down. So they sold the marketing manager's car. Thanks to the COE, I got paid because we got $60,000 from that. We got paid, and we paid the supplier. But from there, when I left in 2007, Chemoil had become the world's largest independent bunkering company, doing 24 million tons of fuel across the globe, and we hit a $5 billion turnover. We took the company public in 2006, and we reached nearly a market cap of $1 billion. That's when I left. But what was the process through this whole thing? The process was basically, one, a never say die attitude. you will always find a solution, and you will always find a solution, and you always stayed positive. And I remember in those days, I'm talking about 96, 97, Bob used to tell me, oh, when we become a 10, by the way, when I went there, we had only $50,000 in equity in the company. And Bob would say, oh, we should, when we become $10 million, we'll take the company public. And I said, yeah, okay. And then we went, from being 10 million to, then he used to say, oh, we have to be $1 billion company. And I was, but if you ask me what was the key driver for getting from Chemoil from there, one is staying positive, believing in yourself, and just focused on finding solutions. And I can give you a lot. And Bob was always known as an idea factory. And whenever we agreed on something, we built in Jurong Island here, we built a 500,000 ton storage terminal. I remember at that time when we won in 2002, 2003, we didn't have the money. We said we should go into shipping. I thought it was a good idea. We did the analysis and we said we're going, but we didn't have the money. So I literally took whatever money Bob had from his thing, bought the one ship for $3 million. So relationships in this one were very important, I must have. We had Itochu of Japan buy into the company in 1996. And we grew then we bought another ship, and last minute Itochu said, look, we cannot be in shipping because oil will, because of oil spills. We somehow managed. I said, give me a loan of 3. So one thing you have to learn, you have to be a beggar with a tie. I always used to call myself a beggar with a tie. Going to the banks, begging, you have cash flow problems, and so on and so forth. We sold those ships 3 years later for $92 million. We made, that's how much money, that's how much profit we made. The ships I had bought for 28.5, we sold them for 52 and everything. So the other, while we were doing the shipping, we decided to we saw an opportunity to build a terminal. Whenever there is, pain, there's also an opportunity. At that time in Singapore, there was no sand for reclamation. And this is a very interesting story because if you go down to Jurong Island was actually supposed to be a clean cut, like a square here, what I would call in the corner where our terminal is built. But at that time, SARS hit. There was no business coming in, and they didn't have sand. So we told them, okay, if you want us, we will invest the money, but we need a back basin to be able to dock ships, because you couldn't dock it on the front, what I would call out here. So they would have to cut a basin here for us to bring the ships. So interestingly, we convinced the EDB, Economic Development Board, and Jurong Island Authority at that time, and they went to the president and modified the map of Singapore to get that deal done. So, that terminal itself, we took the money from the shipping, we put 30 million. We didn't know how we were going to get the money, but I've always believed in this, and that's a Chemoil and Bob's philosophy. If the project is good, and if they see the passion in you, you will always find the money. And that has been my experience across, all my turnaround management. Then we go to I'm running out of time, but then we'll go to the Indian group. This was an interesting company group because it had 26 companies, right from fertilizers to petrochemicals to hotels to car dealerships and everything else. And when I looked at it, and I told the owner, I said, what do you want to be in? So we decided at that time to be in fertilizers and petrochemicals, and then we did the whole restructuring. I mean, I can give you many examples. You take Manali Petrochemical. When we took over, it was only making $2 million to $3 million. You found out what those 3 issues were. One was propylene oxide and everything else. You changed that thing. You got the tank and everything. Today, that company makes upwards of $12 to $15 million. Same thing with Tamil Nadu Petrocorp, which was in the LIB business, which is the small balls which go into your detergent powder. That made a $10 million loss when I took over. Today it makes $15 million, $10 to $15 million profit. So there are a lot of stories I can give you, but I know we're running out of time, and Nikhil's already shown me that he's come on video, so I will stop here. I'm happy to answer questions because I've been blessed to have a lot of experience and a lot of stories to tell. But I guess we'll keep it at that, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Sanjiv. I must say that we have had a record participation today. You really turned it around, as done it in turnaround management. We have close to 80 people. So I think the first question is going to be asked by Vikas Sinha. Vikas, go ahead.
Yeah, hey Sanjiv, can you hear me?
Yeah, Vikas, go ahead. He's my erstwhile classmate.
Yeah, great to see you. So many years. Hey, really interesting presentation. One question that I wanted to ask you is, you talked about risk management when you go into handling a turnaround situation. But is there a scenario where you failed turning around a company? Because when you look at statistics, more than half of the turnarounds fail. So what would be the learnings that you got from there that you could share with us?
I think, like I said right in the beginning, you have to be honest with yourself. And I'm starting from that point because when you go in, that's why when I go into a company which is making losses, I don't assume that it's a company there and I can turn it around. Okay. I spend a good 1 to 2 months first to see whether you can turn it around or not. And there are times I've said, look, you can't turn it around, let it go. So unless I have the confidence that I can do it, because ultimately it's going to be driven by your leadership, nobody else. Unless I have the confidence I can do it, I'm not going to take it on. Now, so far, I've had only 2 experiences. I've had a recent one in where I work right now with Lippo, with the Riyadi family in the US. And that didn't work out. I haven't put that in because it's just winding down, but that hasn't worked out the way the other 2 have worked out. But that is for different reasons because, I had already gone in when the mess was created. I was sent just to clean it up from a legal point of view and standpoint. But I think a lot of it is gut at the end of the day, because you don't take on something which you don't believe that you have a good chance of succeeding. And that's how I would say you manage the risk, where you go in and you're going to be successful, and you have a good chance of it being successful.
Thanks.
Sushil Srivastava.
Yeah, it was very nice presentation, and since I'm also from the petrochemical background, so I found it very interesting. And first time I started to note down also many things. See, I'm running one of the startup companies. So can you please advise me for the startup company who wants to make a turnaround or who wants to be successful? Because you mentioned about the big companies like Chemoil or AM International Group. So those companies were really big companies earlier. So they had to turn around once they came to up to certain problems. So they started to turn around. But what about the startup companies who are facing some kind of problems and who are having like self-funding kind of business? Can you please give me some advice?
Sushil, I can't, to be very frank with you, I don't have an answer to your question because I don't know your business, and unless I look at it, I won't be able to tell you. It's a very generic question. So, in turnaround management, you really have to understand what the business is. If you're saying you have a small startup petrochemical company and tell me what is wrong, I don't know. I can't give you an answer to that question. I'm sorry. But if you need help, I'm happy. You can get my number from Nikhil, and we can talk offline, and I'm happy to help you out in whatever way I can.
Saurabh, go ahead.
Yeah, hi Sanjiv. Saurabh here. So basically, my question is around when you are going for a turnaround management. There are 2 ways to motivate people in terms of target. What I feel is like you set you are at X and you put a target of 10X, and then you motivate the people. And then, or if you are at X and you put a target of 2X or 3X, and then to motivate people. So what type of strategy you follow in terms of target setting, and which is the best for, according to you?
Sorry, I didn't get your last part. In terms of what did you say?
So there are people who put big target numbers for achieving, for example, X to 10X, and there are people who go step by step from X to 2X and then 4X. Which according to you is a better way of pulling the things up?
Look, it's a very simple thing in life. You always keep the expectations of people in check. So I'm not going to tell. One of the big things is for your own reputation is, today at least I can say this, that if I go into any circles, if Sanjiv says this, he'll deliver it. So there's no point in this whole thing of, I'll deliver 10X, give me this much of money up front so I can do this thing. Doesn't work. Ultimately, it's a long-term game versus a short-term game. Short-term, you'll make some money and go. Long-term, people will come to you and if you tell them you can't do it, you can't do it. So they respect that. And if you say you will deliver this, they know you will deliver, or the chances of you delivering is very, very high. So you have to decide what game you want to play. You want to be a one-trick pony, or you want to be there in for the long haul.
Asa, go ahead.
So Sanjiv,
Yeah.
a quick question. In your experience, how receptive are managements or CEOs of such turnaround recommendations? Because, clearly some of them might get or take it personally. And the follow-up question to that is, what percentage of turnarounds you had to sack the top management?
Pretty much in all. I
Okay.
mean, look, they're never going to be your friend. Let's put it that way, right? I wouldn't be there if they did their job. You ask a more fundamental question. I wouldn't be there if they did their job. So are they going to be? And a lot of the times it's because of the environment the owner creates. Please understand that. A lot of this in India, for example, it's, the grandfather built the group. The father was in this group saying, okay, give me $1 from that contract, $1, and allowing them to do whatever they want to do. Then what happens if you are not straight and clear? That guy tells the CFO, give me $3 because the boss has asked it. He gives the boss $1 and keeps $2 for himself. So then now you're going into, this is what I've experienced. Now I'm going into that environment. His $2 are not going to happen. And then he's not going to give you he's going to make it as difficult for you. And please keep in mind, and in this case, what happened, he had a good rapport with the father. The son brought me in. So you had a lot of politics getting played. And then I just went in one day and I said, you're done, and got him out. Then the father threw a fit. So you have to manage all those. Then I had to get the son prepared to manage the father's fit before I did it. So those are the things you have to touch and feel on the ground. Yeah, but if you ask me, I'll say 9 out of 10 times you got to let the top guy go, because he's the cause of the problem. If he did his job properly, I wouldn't be there.
Christina. Sorry.
Oh, hi Sanjiv. Actually,
Hi, Tina.
yay. Actually, my question is, I think brought up already the previous one, just about family-owned corporations, like how to tread that line when you know there's a conflict, which is what you just mentioned in that previous case. I don't know how you can explore that further when you feel that there's actually a family strain in the leadership.
Yeah, look, that is always there. Even today, what I'm doing, that is always there. At some point, you have to decide what you believe is right. And if they don't want you, I'm happy to go, pack my bags and go home. I don't care. Because if you're going to sit down and dance to all these tunes, you will never get anything done. You have to keep in mind that the reason why they are in this mess is because they were doing all this tap dancing. Nobody wants to catch the bull by the horns. So my thing is clear. Beyond, okay, you have to be a little bit, this thing, pat a few egos and all. But beyond the point, you just have to go and say, look, and then if they don't like it, they say, you can please go leave. I'm happy to go home and sleep. I've got better things to do in life. Because you're not going to be able to do that. You can't bring the change in. You cannot get things done. Then what's the point? Because they have to make that fundamental decision. Do they want this to get turned around, or they want to sit down in the same mess that they've been in? Otherwise, I tell them, don't call me. Go find somebody else. Simple.
There is a question from Aditya Yellamati. He said, how did you end up solving the worker issue in the Chennai turnaround?
Just fire them and deal with it later on. Figure out how to talk to the labor commissioner, this one, that one. I mean, that's how you do it in India. There's no other way to do it. You know, it's not as simple as India. Worker issues are the biggest pain in the backside. And a lot of times you can't do anything about it. But at some points you just have no choice, and you just have to say, okay, I'm going to bite the bullet, and whatever has to happen, I'm going to deal with it. Then this fellow will come, they'll call a minister, the minister will send somebody, one goon will come, and I've been through this whole cycle. You know, there's no fixed formula about it. You just have to do it and then figure out how to clean it up.
Okay, one more question is from Ravi. What are the common reasons for the failure across the companies that you have turned around? And what are the top 3 things you observe before you decide whether to take it up or not?
Sorry, what's the first? I'll take it in 2 parts. What's the first question?
Okay, what are the common reasons for the failure across the companies that you have turned around?
Oh, it's clear. It is when the promoter loses it, as in terms of he's not doing the right thing. For example, I told you he was taking $1 from here, $1 from this contract, then that's a problem. That becomes, and most of the time, then what happens is generally the good guys and honest guys will leave because they don't like that stuff. They'll go on. And the guys who what I would call kiss asses remain, because they're kissing ass very well, and then they're making their money on the side. And so that results into bad management. And simple and straightforward. It is because of bad management. What's the second part?
What are the top 3 things you observe before you decide to take the offer or not, to turn around?
It's very difficult to say 1, 2, 3 this thing, because you have to understand every business driver is different. You have to first figure out what are those drivers and what are the real issues in each company, because every company is different. Like Chem Oil turnaround was a completely different story. Chem Oil turnaround was because I think there wasn't enough structure, and the company grew too big too fast, and then it collapsed. I mean, we had the issues. Laterally, when we grew, we put the structure, and then we grew very well. So in the Indian scenario, it was just pure bad management, you know, just neglect for years, and it just allowed it to go. Look at Manali Petrochemical. This company is the only company in India which has a license to make propylene oxide. They could have been 10 times the size they are today. They put up a plant of 40,000. Today, India's requirement is 250,000, and they sat at 40,000. And they got the best technology and everything to make polyols. Basically, make your chemicals for your dashboard. When you put the chemicals, you make your foam for your mattresses. They have all that. It's such a beautiful company. If it was given to me 20 years ago, it would have been at least 10 times its size today.
Ravi Valecha, go.
Yeah, Sanjiv, hi, this is Ravi here. Okay, I have a question. I am in the process of turning around a company in the financial space. So, in a turnaround, because there is a legacy which is already created, so there is a lot of relearning or, unlearning of the processes or the baggage which is historically created. How do you cope with this sort of a baggage, especially considering that in the market also that sort of a baggage would have been created, and to redo the entire, because if you are starting a new company, you have a clean slate to operate in. So in this sort of a company, you have to first clean the slate and then redo the entire thing.
Ravi, short question. There are other people also. So let your
So how do you come about? How do you do all those things, and your thoughts on those things?
Ravi, it's a very simple thing. You are not in a, as I made one point, you cannot be a nice guy. Okay. If you're looking for, I know a lot of management gurus says you have to take the whole team along and they have to all, buy into your vision. That's okay in all these big multinational companies. And when you're doing turnarounds in brick and mortar, you don't have time for that. If you believe that's the right process, just force it down. Yes, there will be a few things, but the other thing is you also have to be very aware that you could be wrong too. So you have to watch that. And if it's not working out, you need to be able to course correct very fast. So there's no formula as a how do you, if you believe that is the process, this process was wrong, this is the new process, you just say, this is how I want to do it. You have to be a dictator in a certain way, but that's just the reality that you have to deal with.
Thanks, Sanjiv.
There's one more question from Chandrasekhar Ganesh. How to identify the drivers? Is it as straightforward as revenue generation business units, or what are the factors with which you evaluate and select the drivers?
See, again, every business means like a petrochemical, in petrochemicals. Polyols company is very different driver from a fertilizer company, is very different from a LAB company. So it is a combination of technical, it's a combination of sometimes product, it's a combination of figuring out, what kind of products at what margin, polyols, for example, is your base, or LAB. Then what are you making? Are you going into the higher product margins? And also, I wouldn't say, if you ask me, how do I find that out? You just have to be curious. You have to have no ego, and you have to keep on knocking at different doors, talking to 50 people, and then you will find it somewhere. And you will always find also within, as I said, you will find those 1 or 2 diamonds who have been hidden under the soil in the company. Find those guys. They will be so eager to tell you what they know, and you will just get everything back, and then you'll figure it out from there.
Karthik Ramaswamy.
Hello, Sanjiv. I'm Karthik from MBA 2020. Thanks for this webinar. I wanted to ask you how differently you approach change management from that of a turnaround management.
It's another, what do you call it? It's a fancy name for the same thing, in my view. Change is, if you want to get to that's more of what I would call the multinationals do with, motivate the people, counsel them. This doesn't work in turnaround management. And that's why I figured out very early in my career, I'm not a guy for a multinational company. I will fail. I will tell you that very clearly. I would fail if I was in a multinational company because my style wouldn't suit them. Because it's a straight style, you got to do it, get it job done. There's no time to have 10 meetings to decide whether you buy one safety pin. So that's a simple and straightforward. There's no difference between change management and turnaround management. I said, probably change managers more for the multinationals to fluff it up, but to me, there's no difference.
Sanjiv, the next guy, I hope he has written that 100-page to 10-page thing. He will ask you a question in a short while.
If my fingers could speak, Nikhil, right now my fingers will speak. Hi, Sanjiv. What's up?
Gaurav, it's so great to see you after what, 15, 18 years that we worked together?
Easy.
Fantastic.
Since everyone else is here.
By the way, for everybody's knowledge, Gaurav and I worked together in Chemoil in
98, 99.
Oh, sorry, 98, 99. So more than 20 years. And he's one of my victims, if I may say that.
I survived.
of being direct and get the job done. Sorry, Gaurav, go ahead.
Sanjiv, you came to earn it towards the end when you mentioned that pretty much you have to take a call and then people have to force it down a bit to get things done. In the current world scenario, where many companies are going to start requiring turnaround packages or consultancy, what gathered, or do you think that all the methods that you have used over these years can be deployed in the world going forward?
So I think, Gaurav, the answer to that question is it depends on, again, I think most of what I have learned is more in where brick and mortar this thing. If you ask me, can I use it in a digital space? I don't think so. Okay. because the drivers in those kind of businesses, or even in the financial business that I think Ravi was talking about, the drivers for those businesses are very different. But there are certain core basics which don't change in terms of the human part of it, is that you have to be direct, you have to be firm, but you also have to be fair. And if you do well, you reward. Because I think to me, that's the core of the whole thing. You can't, a lot of people, especially in India, when the company makes money, then they want to, start saying, no, I won't pay you one rupee bonus kind of thing. To me, that's penny wise, pound foolish. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter whether whether you have 800 million, you have 0 million, or anything. When you're going in a box, you're going in a box. So I don't believe, my personal belief system is not to mess around with employees. Have an impact, have a positive impact, that they will remember you always. To me, that is more important than anything else.
Sanjiv, last 3 questions. One is by Vivek Mehta. Which game would you find closest in your mind as you would go around turning around a company?
Which what?
Which game or which sport would be most akin to the art of turnaround management?
Can't think of any. I play squash, so I think squash is good. You got to be nimble, you got to be fast, you got to be agile. You got to be able to change course. Probably for me, that's the one. I don't know all sports, but that's the one I played.
There's a question from Saura. For people under your team, do you believe in setting big, audacious goals, which are many times unachievable?
Look, you got to be realistic. Okay, there's no point. I can say I'm going to make you this. In life in general, you want to set things which make sense. You got to push it a little bit, but you don't push it where people say, "Oh God, that's unachievable." So I'm not. You have to lead from the front to make that happen, right? And as I said, when you go into a turnaround situation, you always have to try to have small wins first. Don't try to get the big wins first. Just try the small, because that starts getting the people to believe in you. When you say, okay, let's do this, this will happen, and you do it and it happens, then there are more people buying in. Oh shit, this guy, what he says makes sense. So let's support him. So you got to do it in, smaller steps like that. You can't, set big goals and this thing. It has to be realistic. I think also it's about, in life, everything is about setting expectation. So you have to learn that. Again, one of the points I made earlier was it's also about balance. So you can't go too high, you can't go too low. Where is that balance did you find? In everything that you do, there's balance. So you have to find that balance even on the target setting.
Mark? Mark, can you hear me? Go ahead.
This is a follow-up. Yeah. This is a follow-up. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, this is a follow-up on Mr. Batra's question regarding the metrics. Will it change now that we have virus going on? Because in '97, we didn't have that. It was the metrics were sound, the financial metrics. In 2008, it was the same. What's going to happen now after the virus? What will be the impact of the metrics with companies are turned around, or when businesses start closing? About that.
Mark, I don't think we really know, and I will be just guessing, and my guess is as good as anybody else. But look, we don't know the impact of the viruses yet. Okay, the stock market, you saw crude going to -37. I've seen crude, when I used to trade oil at $10 a barrel, I've seen crude at, $120, $130 a barrel. I never ever thought we will see a crude at -37. So I personally believe right now, everybody is focused on just getting back to work or going from the economy to restart and everything. The real impact is going to be seen in 6 months' time. I think that's when the real impact is. How many businesses will survive? How many businesses will not survive? The businesses which survive, what is the demand destruction? So maybe they will survive for 6 months and not survive for a year. So nobody has the answers to that question. But to me personally, the basics don't change in a lot of these turnaround situations. And who are the guys who are going to get hit the most? Are the guys, for example, you have a lot of companies in a, when the market is like this, they all seem to be making money. But the question you have to ask is, are those companies really maximizing the profits they can make? And you look like a hero. Wow, I made whatever, $10 million in this market. But actually, if you bring in somebody else and he really looks at it, you could probably make $25 million. But because he's making 10, you're happy. Not saying 20, he should be actually making 25. But he gets away with it because the market is like this. The question is, all those guys are going to disappear once this has happened. And only the true strong guys will survive. And I really don't know the answer, but my belief is that every company which is in a loss making, they're like humans in a certain, because every company is very different. The soul of the company is different. The problem of the company is different. So you really have to go in and feel that company before you really decide on the methods. As I said, a lot of it is common sense. You will see a lot of waste. In a lot of these companies, when you go, they're making money, but there's a lot of waste. So how do you cut that down and make sure that the company operates on an optimal profit level, whether it's a good market, bad market, and there is no wastage? So I think, to answer your question, I don't think the fundamentals will change of turnaround, but it's not a one size fits all.
One last question from Amit, and then we will wrap up the Q&A. The question is, do you generally go in as turnaround consultant and leave once you're done or you're sacked? Or do you prefer, that's my word, he didn't say that. Or do you prefer to buy out a stressed asset, prefer to turn it around and sell it once done?
Look, I think the more fundamental question you have to ask is, are you having fun? If you're enjoying what you do, then how does it matter whether you made $5 million, $50 million, or no dollars at all? So I think it's really a personal choice that you make. I mean, I know I can, like, for example, I didn't have to work in chem oil. I could have worked in a VTOL or something. I would have made much more money than I made in chem oil, to be very honest with you. But if you are at that point in your life where you say, okay, I have enough, I'm happy, but the bigger point is, am I enjoying what I'm doing? And I learned this lesson very early in life. When I graduated from engineering, I worked in a company called Bajaj Auto in India. And I enjoyed it. I was doing well, but they were not paying me what I believed they should have paid me. And then I switched a job only for money. And then I had a boss who was a real pain in the ass. And I was so unhappy. And that's when I realized, I remember I made a decision in my life, I will never move for money. So whether you buy a company, turn it around, the question you have to ask yourself is, are you enjoying the ride? And I can tell you, I have enjoyed every day of my work. I don't get up in the morning and say, oh God, I got to go to work. Because there is a kick to it. And at the end of the day, when you turn around back and look back, in 5 years, you've taken this company from here, there's no better joy, no amount of money in the world can tell you, look, I can make up for that. And nobody can take that away from you also. Remember that.
Thank you, Sanjiv. Before I had met you, or I not met you, I talked to you. I know you're a controversial figure, but once I chatted with you, and I knew that your presentation would be more philosophical, practical, humane, and unfortunately, because it's an official thing, not much of expletives, no much of galis. But thank you very much, Sanjiv. I'm happy that I pestered you and I could bring you here. And thank you for getting so many of your Pinoy classmates on. That shows that you straddled over batches. For the uninitiated, he went in 92 and he was supposed to graduate in 94, but he had to take a 1-year drop because, as you know, the professors there didn't like his turnaround, so he had to stay. And in 95 he graduated. But thank you. Thanks a lot, Sanjiv, for an excellent presentation.
Well, thank you to everybody, and thanks, Mark, for getting a couple of our classmates. I see, and I see some of the guys who have worked with me, Gaurav. I don't know if a couple of the other guys were there because the screen is too this thing. But thank you for the opportunity, and I think I speak for Nikhil. I want to thank you on behalf of everybody for organizing this. I think you've done a good job, and I want to offer you my personal support. That if you need anything, I'm happy to contribute to a good cause that you will for the alumni. On that note, thank you everybody, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sanjiv. The last part was very interesting, Sanjiv. I hope people have listened, and may your tribe increase. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.